Dockers had always lived in the busy city where life moved fast. Cars honked all day, tall buildings covered the sky, and people were always in a rush. She was a smart and curious young lady, but she had never been to her parents' hometown. Her parents had always told her about the quiet village where they grew up, but they never took her there. One sunny afternoon, Docker's cousin Morin came visiting. Morin was full of energy and excitement, and her stories about the village made Dockers curious. "Dockers," Morin said one day as they sat chatting in the living room, "you are missing out. The village is so peaceful and beautiful. People are kind, the air is fresh, and life is simple over there." Dockers raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? What is there to see in a small village? I bet it's just farms and trees." Morin laughed. "You will never know until you visit. Let's go together, it will be fun." Dockers thought about it for a moment. Her parents had always spoken fondly of the village, and maybe it was time to see it for herself. When she told her parents about Morin's suggestion, they were thrilled. "It's a good idea," her father nodded. "It is time. You know where you came from. The village is your home too." Docker's mother supported him. "It will help you understand your roots and traditions. Go see for yourself." So, with her parents' approval, Dockers and Morin packed their bags and set off for the village. When they arrived, Dockers was surprised. The village was nothing like the noisy city she was used to. The air was fresh and smelled of flowers. There were a few cars, mostly bicycles, and people walking around. Chickens and goats roamed freely, and children played in the open fields, laughing and chasing each other. "Wow," Dockers said, looking around. "It's so quiet here." Morin grinned. "I told you. Isn't it nice?" An elderly woman carrying a basket of fruits greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome, my children. Are you visiting?" "Yes, Ma," Morin replied politely. "This is my cousin Dockers. It's her first time here." The woman nodded. "You will love it here. Take your time to enjoy our little village." Dockers smiled back. Everyone seemed so kind and welcoming. She immediately felt at peace. They spent the rest of the day resting and unpacking. Dockers couldn't stop admiring the starry sky that night. Unlike the city, where lights from buildings covered the stars, the village sky was clear and full of twinkling stars. "This place feels so magical," she exclaimed to herself as she fell asleep. The next morning, Morin suggested they explore the village. A young boy named Nosa volunteered to show them around. Nosa was about 10 years old, full of energy, and knew every corner of the village. "I'll take you to see everything," Nosa said proudly. "The river, the old baobab tree, and even the markets." The three of them set out, chatting and laughing as they walked. They saw farmers working in the fields, women pounding yam, and children fetching water from a stream. Dockers was fascinated. "This is so different from the city," she said to Morin. "Everything feels so real." As they walked back home, they came across a large, dried tree with roots sticking out of the ground. It was old, twisted, and looked like it had been there forever. It blocked part of the narrow path, making it hard to walk through. "Why don't they just cut this thing down?" Dockers asked, pointing at the roots. "Someone could trip and hurt themselves." Nosa's cheerful face suddenly turned serious. He stepped back and shook his head. "No, that is not just an ordinary root." Dockers frowned. "What do you mean? It's just a piece of dried wood." "No, Auntie," Nosa said, lowering his voice. "That is the great oracle. It is as old as the village itself. Some say it is the spirit of our forefathers. Others say it is an old woman who turned into the stump. But everyone knows it protects us and is very powerful." Dockers burst out into laughter. "You can't be serious. This dried piece of wood is an oracle? That's ridiculous." Morin, however, looked uneasy. "Dockers, maybe we should just leave it alone." "Leave it alone? It's just a tree root," Dockers insisted. She walked up to the stump and raised her foot to kick it, but Nosa grabbed her arm and pulled her back. "Please, Auntie, don't do that," he begged. "You must not touch it or disrespect it. Bad things will happen." Dockers rolled her eyes. "This is nonsense." Morin and Nosa walked away, but Dockers stood there, still wondering how foolish people could be to believe such superstitions. Suddenly, she felt the urge to pee. She looked around for a bush to hide behind, but hesitated. "What if there are insects or snakes?" she muttered. Her eyes suddenly landed on the stump, and an idea struck her. "It's just a piece of wood," she thought. "Why not?" Without thinking, she looked around to make sure no one was looking. When she was sure she was alone, she quickly squatted and relieved herself on the stump. She laughed as she ran to catch up with Morin and Nosa. That night, Dockers went to bed feeling proud of herself for proving how silly the villagers' beliefs were, but her laughter didn't last long. The next morning, Dockers woke up to a wet bed. She sat up in shock. "What did I wet the bed?" she whispered. She hadn't wet the bed since she was a child. She quickly washed up and cleaned the sheets before anyone could notice. Luckily, there was a waterproof sheet under the bed sheet, so the mattress was safe. But as she carried the sheets outside to dry, Morin saw her. "Dockers, why are you washing so early?" Morin asked. Nothing," Dockers said quickly. "I just felt like washing." Morin nodded but then stopped and pointed at Dockers' legs. "Wait, Dockers, what's that on your legs? Are you urinating?" Dockers looked down and froze. A stream of urine was running down her legs, and she hadn't even noticed. Feeling embarrassed, she ran inside and locked herself in the bathroom. "What is happening to me?" she asked in confusion. After she had cleaned up and put on fresh clothes, Dockers waited for a while in the bathroom. She wanted to be sure the strange problem had stopped before coming out. When she was sure, she stepped out and went to meet Morin in the living room. Morin was sitting on the sofa, waiting for Dockers. "What happened, Dockers? Are you okay?" she asked with concern. Dockers smiled weakly. "I'm fine. Maybe I drank too much water last night. That's all," she said, trying to sound calm. Morin nodded. "If you say so." Before Morin could finish her sentence, she looked down and froze. "Dockers, look at your legs again! You're urinating!" Dockers froze. She looked down and saw the same thing happening again. Tears filled her eyes as she turned and ran toward the bathroom. This time, Morin followed her and knocked on the bathroom door. "Dockers, what's going on? Are you okay? Talk to me." From inside the bathroom, Dockers cried, "I don't know what's happening, Morin. I can't stop it. I don't even feel anything, but it just keeps coming out. What do I do?" Morin was worried. "I think we need to go to the hospital first," she said. "But let me get something to help. You can't go out like this." She ran to a nearby shop and bought adult diapers. When she came back, she handed them to Dockers. "Here, wear this for now, so we can go out without any accidents." Dockers felt embarrassed but agreed. After putting on the diaper, they went to the hospital. At the clinic, the doctor listened carefully as Dockers explained her problem. "I just woke up this morning, and I could no longer control it," she said. "It keeps happening, and I don't know why." The doctor ran several tests on Dockers. She waited nervously, hoping they would find something easy to fix. After a long wait, the doctor came back with the results. "There is nothing wrong with you physically," he said. "All your tests are normal. I'll give you some medicine to help, but I don't see any medical problem." Dockers and Morin left the hospital feeling frustrated. The medicine did not even work, and the problem only got worse. Dockers was now using almost 10 diapers every day. The constant urination made her feel weak, and she started to lose weight. However, Morin didn't give up. "Let's try some local herbs," she suggested. They went to meet an elderly woman in the village who was a renowned traditional healer. The woman prepared a special herbal mixture for Dockers and gave her instructions. "Drink this 3 times a day," she said. "It will help cleanse your body and stop the urine." Dockers followed the instructions, but nothing changed. She still couldn't stop the constant flow of urine from her body. Weeks went by, and despite trying the herbal remedies and visiting the doctor, nothing seemed to work. Dockers grew weaker and more frustrated. The constant urination had made her life unbearable. She couldn't go out without diapers, and she was losing hope. The villagers whispered behind her back, and even Morin was starting to look concerned. One afternoon, as Dockers sat outside the house, staring at the dried tree stump from afar, the young boy Nosa came up to her. His eyes were full of worry, and he spoke softly. "Auntie? The oracle is upset." Dockers frowned. "What are you talking about, Nosa?" "I've heard enough of these ridiculous stories." Nosa's voice grew serious. "You disrespected it. You didn't believe, and you disrespected the oracle. Now it's angry, and it's punishing you." Dockers laughed bitterly. "You really believe that? That old stump is causing all this? How can you be so naive?" But Nosa didn't laugh. "The oracle protects us. It keeps the village safe, and it punishes those who disrespect it. My grandmother warned me about this." Docker's mind raced. Could this all really be connected to the tree stump? She had no choice but to confront her actions. Maybe it wasn't just an old root, but something more powerful than she could understand. That night, unable to sleep, Dockers went outside and made her way toward the tree stump. She stood there for a long moment, unsure of what to do. Was it too late to make things right? What if the oracle's curse was real? With a deep breath, Dockers knelt before the stump, her knees touching the earth. She muttered an apology. "I didn't understand, but now I do. Please, I am sorry." For the first time, she felt a strange calm wash over her. She placed her hand gently on the stump, hoping for a sign, but nothing happened. She waited for what felt like an eternity before rising to leave. As she turned to go, she suddenly felt something shift in the air. The wind picked up, swirling around her, and a soft voice whispered through the trees. "You have learned, young one," the voice said. "The earth speaks to those who listen." Dockers froze. The voice was not one she could explain, yet she knew it was real. Her heart pounded in her chest, but a wave of relief also washed over her. She had done what she could. Now, she could only wait. The next morning, Dockers woke up to find the constant flow had finally stopped. She couldn't believe it. For the first time in weeks, she felt normal again. Her body was no longer betraying her. Moran looked at her with wide eyes. "Dockers? You're okay? You're not—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Dockers smiled. A weight lifted from her shoulders. "I'm fine. It's all over." As she stood up, she felt a sense of gratitude she hadn't known before. The village was no longer just a quiet place. It had become a part of her story, a place of understanding. The oracle's curse had taught her to respect not only the land, but also the wisdom that lived within the traditions of her ancestors. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dockers and Moran walked back to the tree stump together. Dockers knelt once again and whispered a prayer of thanks, a final promise to never forget the lessons she had learned. And from that day on, Dockers carried with her the understanding that sometimes it's not about seeing to believe, but believing to see. The oracle's curse had been a painful trial, but it had changed her forever.